Hey guys, sorry about that. My video has decided to crash and leave me alone, so I can only record so much in so time. So I've done up to Liverpool and part one. This is going to be part two, and I'm hoping I'm going to finish the rest of this table, because if I don't, it's going to take me decades to finish this video. So we spoke about Liverpool and how Jurgen Klopp is now just about to has realised it's going to take him some time to blend in with Liverpool and put his style of football and his way across to the players, across to the fans, across to the squad. I think next season they'll be a bigger force than what they are now. I'm just hoping that they don't see the season now as sort of like a dead and buried one. You know, there's plenty to play for, and they can be top six and get back into the Europa League. I just think top four is just a bit too much for them. But January will be interesting to see if they can buy anybody. I think a striker is definitely something they need. Maybe a centre-back as well. Lovren and Skirtle are just not working. It's constant speculation as well of them buying a new goalkeeper, which I can't personally see myself. Mignolet's, he's not a bad keeper. He's just not a Premier League great keeper. He's not a De Gea. He's not a Lloris. He's not a Cech. He's not a Courtois. He's not a Joe Hart. So, but Liverpool have no reason to sell him. There isn't really anybody around that's available that I can think of anyway. That needs that will help or benefit Liverpool. So they'll stick with Mignolet, and it'll be interesting to see how they go on for the rest of the season. But speaking of teams who are pushing up in places they shouldn't be, Watford are the next team we're going to talk about. And again, what a season they've had. Quique Sanchez-Flores has done an amazing job. It's so good to see Watford back in the Premier League. They've been really unlucky the last two times they've been in there. They've been relegated straight away. I can't see them at any danger of that. I'll put an argument for that they're already safe. They've had some wonderful, wonderful games this season, and they deserve to be where they are. You look at the front two of Odier Ighalo and Troy Deeney, and they've been absolutely magnificent together. They deserve to be ninth, easily in the top 10. They're easily safe, I think. They're just it's one of the promoted teams who are a breath of fresh air. They've been absolutely awesome. Gomez is in goal. He was never a great keeper when he was at Spurs. So you look at him now and you think, well, that's a bit dodgy having him. I do feel their goalkeeper situation needs to be addressed. I think if they can wrap up this permanent signing of Nathan Ake on loan from Chelsea, that will be a really, really good signing for them. I think he's been awesome for the season. The Sharks will obviously circle around Ighalo because he's had a terrific season. He scored, I think, 8 or 9 consecutive games. He's up there as the Premier League top scorer along with Jamie Vardy and people like that. And he's been absolutely tremendous. He's a different type of play. I don't know what, if you think of teams that you just associate certain types of football with, or managers, things like that. So if you talk about Stoke, you talk about when when Tony Pulis was in charge, and he talks about long ball football and how boring it is, and you talk about that with Sam Allardyce as well. It's that type of manager. I don't know why, but I seemingly have that with Watford. I just see them as a long ball team, and I don't really know why. But they've totally blown me away this season. They've surprised me. I think I had them in the bottom three. I did a £50 million bet with William Hill. I didn't put a £50 million more bid on. I put like £1 on and bet that they finish in the bottom three. And you predict the outcome of the season at the end, and there's not a chance I'm going to win it, given the way the season is at the minute. But I put them, Bournemouth. I think I put the 3 promoted teams in the bottom 3 because I just didn't think that. I thought they were too weak, and they just hadn't done enough in the transfer market to sort of challenge and keep themselves up. But all 3 have done an awesome job at different points of the season. Watford has been very continuous, where Norwich and Bournemouth are very hit and miss. We'll talk about them a bit later when we get to them, if I ever get to them. But I think Watford, if they carry on the way they're going, they'll easily finish in the top 12. There'll obviously be a point. There is for every promoted team where they have a dip, and I just hope that theirs is later on rather than now. If it's now, then they're going to start looking over their shoulder just a little bit. I don't think the 3 that are in the bottom 3 are getting out. I think maybe there's one other team that could go down, and when we get to it, eventually I'll talk about them. But Watford are one of those who will definitely not have any problems with staying up. Again, another team that just need to bolster the numbers maybe in January. Like I say, get the signing of Ake, tie Ighalo down to a contract to keep him away from the vultures, and just continue what they're doing. It's a tremendous achievement to do what they're doing. They've all, in recent years, they've brought in 15, 16, 17 players in the summer and just thrown them all together. It happened last season and they stormed the championship. It's happened again this season, and I don't know who's in charge of managing these people, but it's an incredible achievement that they've done. Flores is a wonderful manager, and he's done a really, really solid job. And you've got to give him some terrific credit because, Watford are, again, like Leicester and a bit like Palace, and they've just taken everybody by surprise. They were really unlucky not to beat City. They're just a really, really good team and another breath of fresh air that the Premier League needs. And in a way, they epitomise how weird and crazy this season has been because nobody would have put Watford in the top 9 after 21 games or 20 games. So you've got to give them tremendous credit. I think they'll carry on as well as they have done. Like I said, I think they'll finish top 12 the way they've been playing. You look at the Premier League team and you don't see many teams overtaking them, maybe one or two, given how the season's gone. But, there's still 5 months of the season left, so who knows what's going to happen. It's going to be a bumpy ride, people. It's going to be a bumpy ride. But I'm really looking forward to it. Next couple of teams, I think I'd say 3 of the next 4 probably will be disappointed with the way their season's going. The other team, I think, will be delighted. Next team I'm going to talk about Stoke. Mark Hughes, I've said this probably now for the past month. Mark Hughes will be Man United manager one day. Absolutely. He's transformed Stoke. Since Pulis left and they started with a long ball football, the style has gone. The players that they brought in, Xherdan Shaqiri, what is he doing at Stoke? 12 million quid from Inter Milan is an absolute bargain. Gone are the days of Stoke buying from like Birmingham and Cardiff and teams like that. They're buying from Barcelona and they're buying from Inter Milan, and Stoke could well get into Europe and in the Europa League in the next sort of 3-4 years if they carry on buying people like that. Bojan, Afellay, I think there's a couple of others they bought from Barcelona. Shaqiri's come in from Inter Milan. Arnautovic has come in from abroad as well, and they've all just been terrific. Those front 3 of Bojan, Arnautovic and Shaqiri, what a front line that is. Man United would kill for that front line at the minute. They're a really, really, really good team, and they've been. I would be disappointed. I think Mark Hughes they struggled a lot in the opening. I think they didn't win for the first 6 games, and they were struggling with Bojan had to come back from injury. He'd been out all year last year, and Arnautovic was misfiring, and Shaqiri struggled to sort of acclimatise to the Premier League life. But they've kicked it up another gear and they've notched some super wins over Christmas. They beat United 2-0 at home and dominated that game. It could have been about 4 or 5. Beat Everton away, which really surprised me. They won an absolute thriller 4-3. Shaqiri scored probably one of the goals of the season with that chip over Tim Howard. They're surprising a lot of people, and Mark Hughes has totally changed the way they play football, and it's great to see. Stoke have been a really, really good team since coming into the Premier League. Until they sacked Pulis, that season, they haven't really had a season where they've struggled, and I think it's been the first team from the Championship to really do that properly, and they've been a really, really solid team. They buy very, very well. Shaqiri was their record signing at 12 million. They buy really well and they know who to buy. Jeff Cameron's been a wonderful player for them as well. Defensively, Shawcross not had a great season, but he had a really, really good season last season. Jack Butland in the Stoke goal, he's had a wonderful season. He'll go to the Euros as well if I have my way. I'd also have him if De Gea goes to Real Madrid in the summer, which I think a lot of people are anticipating. I'd go for him. I think he's a terrific young goalkeeper, and I think he'll be. If Joe Hart was maybe 3 or 4 years older, Jack Butland would probably be England number 1 in a couple of years' time. But I think Hart will have that shirt for a long, long time. But there's some very good keepers up and coming that could take it off him. Butland definitely being one of them. Like I said, Stoke will be, I think, fairly disappointed with if they've made a better start, they could probably be in the top 6 by now. And that seems very, very strange to say. But those first 6 games, I think they lost 3 and drew 3 or something along those lines. But they've turned it around really, really well. They're perfectly safe. There's no chance of them going down. Mark Hughes has been really unlucky with a few jobs, barring the Blackburn job and the City job. He's been really, really unlucky. I really, really rate him as a manager, and like I said, I'd happily see him at United now. I think he'd do a wonderful job. I think him and Giggsy as manager and number two would be a really, really good combination. And it sounds really stupid to say, but I think Hughes could bring the glory days back to Man United. I really, really do. I think, he will. If he stays at Stoke for another 5 years, Stoke will win a trophy. Guaranteed. It'll probably be the League Cup or something like that, but they could. Why can't they win it this season? They'll probably beat Liverpool and face Everton in the Stoke-Everton League Cup final this season. Stoke beat Liverpool, Everton beat City. That would be brilliant for the neutrals. It really would. But yeah, Hughes has done a terrific job, and Stoke is safe, and they'll happily. I think they'll be ninth, eighth, ninth. I'd give them. I mean, the top 10 is nothing to be sniffed at in the Premier League. It's a tremendous achievement for a team like Stoke, and I think they can push higher. The front three, if they get the defence sorted, and maybe one or two in the field again to bolster numbers, I think Stoke will be a top 8 team, top 9 team. Speaking of League Cup finals, and speaking of Stoke versus Everton, that's the next team we move on to, Everton and Roberto Martinez. A lot of the season has been, a lot of the start of the season I should say, has been dominated by the John Stones transfer request to Chelsea. That was very high on the agenda at the start of the season. Everton did a terrific job of selling him. Weren't selling him for any price whatsoever. I think Chelsea put 3 bids in. He wasn't going anywhere. Martinez has done a tremendous job managing that. And he deserves a lot of credit for that. On the pitch, Everton, I would be a bit disappointed with their season so far. Lukaku was banging in the goals. De La Feu was an astute signing back from Barcelona. Barkley is starting to come back in that shell. Stones is playing some good football now that he's put what happened in the summer behind him. And Everton, they've got Baines back from injury. Seamus Coleman's development is coming on magnificently, as is Brendan Galloway's. And Everton are, at times, a really, really good team, and they'll give any team a run around for their money. But again, they just have results. There's like 2 or 3 teams where they just sort of switch off and can't score, and they'll just lose sloppy games like the Stoke game. I don't think many people expected them to lose at home to Stoke. Excuse me, but they did. They were unlucky to lose to Arsenal the other week. They do have some poor results, and you just wonder sort of why and how. They drew with Spurs last Sunday, I think it was, when they could easily have lost that game. That was a good point. It was a vital point, I think, for them. With Lukaku banging in the goals left, right, and centre, you'd expect them to be a bit higher up. I think defensively they look a lot better. I think Funes Mori has come in and done pretty well. Jagielka will need to come back from injury quickly, though, because him and Stones at the back are a terrific partnership. I think when Baines comes back to be fully fit, Everton will look a lot more solid. I would definitely go and buy a goalkeeper in January for Everton. I don't think Tim Howard is the keeper that Everton want anymore. He's made a lot of mistakes this season, and he's just struggling a little bit, shall we say. But I'll give tremendous credit to Roberto Martinez. He's got his team into a League Cup semi-final. They're comfortable in the Premier League, top 10 team. I would put them as. They struggled a lot last season. Lukaku wasn't scoring. Barkley was a bit off and whatnot, and they had a disappointing season. But Martinez has turned it around again. He's a terrific young manager, and I think he's a perfect fit for Everton. But yeah, they do need a goalkeeper, maybe another striker, so Lukaku isn't solely reliant just to bang in the goals. Aruna Kone hasn't really done much. I think they'll sell Stephen Naismith in the January transfer window. So just another striker just to support Lukaku would definitely not go amiss for Everton, and they can pull themselves back up into the top sort of 10 of the Premier League, and it will be good to see. The next team who deserve a fair bit of credit will be West Brom. Tony Pulis, he's done a terrific job. Many people tipped them to go down this season. With the incidents obviously in the summer with Berahino and him wanting to leave and go to Spurs and tweeting and doing whatever and being dropped by the squad and doing all that sort of stuff. He's been in bad books again recently with West Brom. I think he'll go in the transfer window. I don't think West Brom really want to deal with him anymore. He's sort of itching for a move away, and as long as Spurs don't sign him, I think they'll be all right. But Tony Pulis has done a really, really good job. Surprised a lot of people. They've kept, I think at one point in the season, I watched them against Everton earlier on in the season at Goodison Park, and it was something like they kept, I think it was like 8 clean sheets already in the season. Absolutely mad. It's a West Brom team. You expect to be sort of down in the bottom half of the Premier League, but leaking goals. But they've done really, really well. I think Rondon has been not a bad striker, not a bad signing. Just needs a few more goals to boost up the confidence. Berahino's not even been in the squad, so there's not many teams in the Premier League this season who need a goal scorer. But West Brom is certainly one of them. They've always sort of struggled with sort of trying to find one, and Berahino, who banged in 20 odd goals, I think it was last season, has just not appeared this season. Again, Rondon just doesn't really fit. That's the sole priority, I think, for West Brom, is just to stay up, no matter sort of what the cost. But a goal scorer really wouldn't go amiss. I'd look to probably the Championship, maybe, just for one or two, just to see who can just alleviate some of that pressure, because West Brom don't concede many, they don't score many either. So I think Ben Foster's a good goalkeeper. Probably will be off to the Euros in the summer. I think Gareth McCauley has done very well. I think Darren Fletcher was a great signing for Man United. I think he's been absolutely superb. And there's, West Brom, I would put them comfortably safe. There'll maybe a few more wins, 2 a month, I'd say, would probably do them well. But like I said, they're not really conceding many. They're not getting battered by many teams, if any. And Tony Pulis can be really, really happy with how well the squad has done. There's obviously going to be improvements in every team and West Brom. I don't find their football very attractive. I'm not going to lie. They're not really a team that I follow particularly well or often or at all. There's not many teams in the Premier League I can say that about, but West Brom is certainly one of them. I just find them a bit dull. But they're comfortably safe in the Premier League, and they're doing well. There's obviously that sort of a bit of a gap from, say, 15th, 16th to the bottom 3, but that goes to show the golfing class. I think West Brom are a lot higher than what many people would put them at. I would put them. I think they'll be safe. I've got no sort of chorus about that. Tony Pulis has never been relegated as a manager, so that sort of tells you enough. I think they'll finish 15th, maybe 15th, 16th. They're going to be one of those teams that have had a really solid start to the season, flirt with relegation just a little bit in the new year. So I think they'll drop a few places now, but then Tony's experience will push them away, and they'll be safe to live another day and fight another Premier League season. So the second team that will be disappointed with their season so far is Southampton. Last season they were absolutely tremendous, absolutely awesome. Really poor last 8 weeks of the season, but this season it's not been great. Poor results. They beat Chelsea 3-1 away from home and then lose 3-0 at home to Everton. They lose 3-2 at home to United. They've lost to Spurs, I think they lost to as well, and they're struggling, really struggling. I wouldn't have put them 13th after last season. Coleman's a really good manager. Pella, the players that they've got, they've got Pella, they've got Bertrand, Nathaniel. No, not Nathaniel Klein. They sold him. Sorry, I knew there had been mistakes creeping in somewhere. They've got Sadio Mane. They've got some really, really good players. Shane Long and people like that. They battered Arsenal 4-1. Wanyama's there. They've got some really, 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 really good players. But they've really struggled this season at times. And again, they're like Spurs and they're like Liverpool in the fact that they can go on a really great run, score some absolutely terrific goals, and then just get blown away by another team. Like I said, losing to Everton at home when Lukaku, I think, scored twice and Barkley scored as well in the opening half of that game. And they, you look at the players that they've sold in the last few years and where they'd be if they didn't sell them. So you look at Lallana and you look at Rodriguez. Jay Rodriguez is still there. You look at Lallana, you look at Schneiderlin, and you just Alderweireld is another one. Really the clubs that they've gone to and what they've done for those clubs and what they could have done for Southampton, possibly with the exception of Alderweireld because he's done really well at Spurs, but especially Schneiderlin and Lallana, who haven't really acclimatised well to Liverpool and Manchester, because obviously they're very different to Southampton. But they've just not really done a lot. I mean, Lallana was terrific for Southampton, but he's not done anything for Liverpool. Schneiderlin being exactly the same. I think Southampton will be safe. I just don't think they're going to be happy with the season. I wouldn't sack Koeman. I don't think anyone who even suggests that knows anything about football. If you're going to suggest that, he's done really, really well with Southampton. You know, I wouldn't say they spend a lot of money, but given the money that they spent on certain players, I would still be disappointed with that. I don't think they should sell Sadio Mane. Certainly don't think they should sell him to Man United if they do. I know it's going to be an interesting last 3 or 4 months for Southampton. Like I say, I don't think they'll be safe. I think they'll finish sort of between 10th and 14th, which will be a disappointing season for them. But, you know, I think given the way the season's gone, I think the fans will happily take that. You know, start again next season. Don't sell their main players, and just kick on next season and compete. I'm not saying the season's now is a write-off, but I just don't think they're going to finish any higher than maybe where they are now. And maybe if they do, it'll be a bit more of a success than maybe some of the other clubs. You know, like I said, Koeman is a terrific manager. And he fits Southampton perfectly. You know, he knows what he needs. Yes, he'll be disappointed with the performances of his players and the squad this season. But no more disappointed than the next team I'm going to talk about, which is Chelsea. Whew, deary me. What has gone wrong with the champions? From winning the Premier League last season, a canter, to being this bad this season. How? Has anybody ever been this bad after defending their title? I mean, you look at sort of Blackburn and oh, excuse me, sorry. Oh, you look at Blackburn and what happened to them when they won the Premier League, and I think it's happened to United at one point. Words cannot describe how bad Chelsea have been at times this season. They lost to Southampton at home. They've lost to, you know, the first win they had this season was against Arsenal. That sort of sums it up, really, doesn't it? The games that they've lost this season have just been, you know, they lost to West Brom back end of last season, got hammered 3-0, so the warning signs were there. You know, the teams that they've lost to this season have just been ridiculous. They lost 3-1 to Everton. They got battered by City. They got battered by Liverpool. Leicester beat them. It's been, you know, it wouldn't surprise me if Villa turned up and beat them the way they've been playing this season. And it cost Mourinho his job. Jose got sacked about a month ago now for just failing. You know, we talk about sort of Premier League champions and they have to improve the squad year on year to carry on competing, and Chelsea just haven't done it. You know, they bought in Begovic from Stoke, who, you know, I credit Stoke for selling him because Butland's come in and done an awesome job. They must be absolutely pissing themselves laughing. But Chelsea have just not improved one bit. You know, Hazard has gone missing. Diego Costa is just a bastard. Matic has been poor. Ivanovic has just been awful. Courtois has not been great. Terry's been poor. I mean, how many players could you name in that Chelsea squad that have been half decent this season? Go. Exactly. I can't name any of them. I honestly can't. Hazard, Pedro's come in and done absolutely nothing. I'm glad United didn't sign him. Good grief. I honestly don't know what's the matter. What has gone wrong? A lot of people put it down to sacking Ava Canario from the dugout. You can't really. Chelsea can't perform because the doctor's not there. You know, Mourinho. You know, he lost it by the end. You know, he was getting fined week in, week out for making comments on referees, and it just wasn't accepting the fact his team weren't good enough to beat the players on the day. You know, I did worry for Chelsea at one point. You know, what if they got relegated? Good grief! You know, there's talk of Drogba coming back just to sort of sit on the bench and be sort of an assistant coach to whoever the next manager is going to be, possibly Guardiola. They've got Gus Hill in contemporary charge at the minute. I don't see why they don't give him the job. You know, he did really well when he was here the first time, and they've shown a bit more stability now in the last sort of couple of weeks since he's been in. You know, they beat, you know, a really good winning away to Palace on Monday when they beat them 3-0. It was a solid victory. They played really, really well on that. But, you know, the improvement signs are there, but they're not going to get top 4. They'll get top 8 if they're lucky. If Hiddink goes on a run like he did the first time he was there when they won 11 out of the last 12, then Chelsea will finish in the top 10, definitely. But I just don't see them finishing anywhere higher than 8th. Just because of the astronomically bad start of the season they've had. A lot of people have said, I'll say one player that has had a really good season, that's Willian. Terrific little player he's been this season, and he's been Chelsea's saviour. A lot of people have said, where would they be if they hadn't had his goals? And probably bottom 3, easily bottom 3. I don't think this is a start of things to come for Chelsea. I think things will obviously get a lot better. They couldn't really get much worse. I just don't see them challenging for anything this season. They're at the League Cup. I don't see them winning the Champions League in the form they're in. I don't see them winning the FA Cup. And I think it's going to be another case of rebuilding the squad next season. I think a lot of players will go. Hazard will definitely be one of them. Costa, probably not. He scored against Palace, but he's lost his way. He needs some serious firing up because he had a blistering start to last season and just hasn't really carried that on. But Chelsea really need some spark and some life in that team. They need just something. Who would you go for? Courtois is still probably the best keeper in the league. I'd still have Ivanovic. He's had a really, really bad season, but I'd still have him as one of the top defenders in the league. Fabregas has also gone missing this season. Shows how much I've noticed him when I've only just mentioned him. Chelsea are in dire straits, and it's going to take something special to get them back up into sort of like the glory days of last season, if you like. Seems so far away now. All my troubles seem so far away. But Abramovich must be shaking his head and wondering what's going on. Hiddink must be doing the same. Chelsea have just been abysmal at times this season. I think I'll come back to it next season, and I just think this is a really, really bad season. I don't think they had any choice but to sack Mourinho. But they can't be happy with how things are, and they really can't be content with how things are, and things have to change rapidly. Hiddink will do a good job. I've no doubt about that. He's a really, really good manager. There's rumours of him taking the Holland job after he's done with Chelsea, so that should be interesting to see how he gets on. But they definitely cannot be happy with how things are at the minute, and they're probably the only, 40, the bottom 3, aside from the bottom 3, they're the only team that things desperately have to change for now. So good luck, Gus. Thoughts are with you, boy. The next 2 teams I would be delighted if I were them at the minute. Probably they'd like to be a bit higher up in the league, but they're not in the bottom 3. They're not, struggling for anything. They're not, they're competing. Let's just put it that way. But I'd be happy. The first team we're going to talk about, Norwich City. Back in the Premier League after, is it a 4 or 5 year absence, I think it is? Something along those lines. Delia is back. Canaries are back. Carrow Road is back. They've had a relatively decent start to the season. A relatively decent point. I think they'll be happy with 15th. They have, that patch where they had 1 win in 11. And there were a lot of people were really looking at them thinking, they're going to really struggle now. They've had a couple of wins over Christmas, which has sort of alleviated the pressure off Alex Neil somewhat. A really, really good couple of... they had an away win and a home win, I think, and they were vital wins. They really, really needed them because they were... That 1 win in 11 was horrendous, Then they went to Old Trafford and beat Man United. So... they've got some really, really good players at Norwich. You look at Nathan Redmond, you look at Robert Snodgrass, you look at is it, I can't remember his name, Mboki, or the lad up front. He's a really, really good player. I really rate him. John Ruddy in goal. Norwich have got some very, very good players. I think again they're going to be one of the teams that really need 2 or 3 players in the January transfer window just to get some fresh faces in, just to bulk up the squad and maybe alleviate a bit more pressure off themselves. Johnny Howson, again, another great player for Norwich. He's had a really, really good season. I think Norwich could... I think if they stayed where they were now until the season, they've stayed up. They're going to be like Leicester and Bournemouth and probably West Brom in respect to the fact that they need 40 points just to stay up. And they'll look at 40 points as the target. And then as soon as they hit that, pressure's off, so to speak. I don't think 40 points will matter this season, given the bottom 3. But... I think that I think if they stayed 15th of the season, it'll be a superb season. I think they desperately need a striker. As good as that Mboki is, I don't rate Cameron Jerome. He was not a Premier League striker in the slightest. I could probably do a better job than him. Just saying. If you're watching Alex, give me a bell. But Norwich have done a decent job, I think, so far. I'd like to see him in the Premier League for a while. I'd happily see West Brom go down. That's an awful thing to say, but I really would. But yeah, Norwich I've got a little bit of a soft spot for Norwich. I think they're a really, really good team. I think the fans are passionate. The fans know what they want. They've got a good young manager in Alex Neil. And I think they'll happily stay in the Premier League. The other team who I'm going to talk about is, with good young manager, is Bournemouth. Romped home with the Championship title last season. Eddie Howe deservedly got Manager of the Year last season, and he's done a respectable job so far for Bournemouth in the Premier League. A lot of people put them down to be favourites to go down, just because of the size of the team, the court, the ground, and just Bournemouth themselves. No one gave them a chance, but they've done really, really well. They're losing Callum Wilson and Tyrone Mings to season-long injuries within the first 3 weeks of the season was devastating for them, and they've struggled really to capture those goals and stop the goals going in, if you like, because it's one end and the other. Mings was a centre back from Ipswich. Callum Wilson was obviously the striker, and he got a hat trick on the opening day of the season when they beat West Ham, but. The losing him after that was a huge blow, and they have struggled for goals since. Matt Ritchie's a terrific little player. I think he's been one of Bournemouth's best players this season. Scored one of the goals of the season against Sunderland. It was a hell of a goal. If you haven't gone back and see it, go back and watch it. It's a terrific volley. But I think, again, Bournemouth needs some players just to keep that squad fresh. I think a goalkeeper would go amiss as well. I don't think Artur Boruc has done terrifically well, and covered himself in glory much for Bournemouth. A goalkeeper, maybe a centre back. I think I'd go for 4. I'd go for a goalkeeper, a defender, and a midfielder. They've just signed someone on loan from Roma. I don't know how they signed someone on loan from Roma. Even Eddie Howe, I think, came out yesterday and said we don't sign players from clubs like that. So it's a testament to how far we've come as a football club, and it is. Roma paid, I think I read somewhere, £17 million for this kid about 2.5 years ago, and I was on loan to Bournemouth. I mean, no disrespect to Bournemouth, but I mean, that's an incredible capture. If he starts banging in the goals that he's renowned for, then Bournemouth have got a treat on their hands, because it's going to be good. But given the fact that they've only got him on loan, it's a good short-term option before Callum Wilson comes back, and that's what they needed. That's how they can look at defensively. They need a short-term option till the end of the season, until Tyrone Mings is fit. They'll look to him next season for improvements in the defence, and I'm sure he'll give you them. But a midfielder, I think, just to help out Ritchie and to help out Mark Pugh and to help out all the others would definitely not go amiss. Harry Arter's done very, very well. Dan Gosling's another one. They've all got experience in one way or another, and whether it being playing for other clubs. Obviously, Gosling was at Newcastle, and it's looking good. I'd happily see Bournemouth in the Premier League. I think they're a really nice side. I really rate Eddie Howe as a manager. I think he's a great young manager. He's the perfect fit for Bournemouth because he knows the club, used to play for the club. He's an actual legend, similar to Gary Monk at Swansea. Fortunately, that didn't work out, but we'll talk about them in a second. But I really think Bournemouth will stay up, and I think they can be very happy along with Norwich in the position that they're in, and West Brom. If they finish the season where they are now, they would be absolutely delighted. They've got another season in the Premier League. Let's build towards next season. But one team who, and this will be outside the bottom 3, the last team that will be unbelievably disappointed with their season, they've just mentioned, is Swansea City. It's been poor. It's been really poor. Gary Monk had a great start to the season. I think they were unbeaten in the first 6, and it's just gone downhill. It's been poor. What more can you say? They need a manager, and they need some wins, and they need them soon. They are inching ever closer towards the bottom 3, and I don't want Swansea to go down because I think they're a really, really good team. They had a really, really good season last season, and I think they're in a way they're still riding that a little bit. But they need to forget last season, and they need to improve badly. I don't think sacking Gary Monk was the right thing to do. I really don't. I think he was a terrific young manager. He was the perfect fit for Swansea. He only came in on a temporary basis, but what he did last season was absolutely superb when they signed him to a I think it was a 2-year deal. When they sacked him, they should have had someone else in mind, but they obviously haven't, and it hasn't gone particularly well since. Their style of football is not quite what it was last season. It's not. They just seem a bit devoid of ideas. They don't really have any decent strikers. Sigurdsson's not found his form. John Joe Shelby's been poor. They've got Eder and Bafétembi Gomis up front who have just not done anything. They're only 2 points off the bottom three, and they really, really need some major improvements in the squad. I think Ashley Williams and Fabianski are good keepers, but they need some more protection. Williams is a defender, even not a keeper, but you know what I mean. Could tell I've been talking too much when this is what I'm talking about now. Ashley Williams as a goalkeeper. Hour and 35, and we're at the bottom three. So I said about 2 hours. We will wrap this up soon, don't worry. But yeah, Swansea are in trouble. They desperately need a striker in the summer, or now even, I should say. Do you know who I'd go for? I'll say this about 2 or 3 clubs now in the bottom three. Jordan Rhodes. Happily go for Jordan Rhodes. I'd go for Charlie Austin. I don't want Swansea to buy players to start building for next season, because what if they get relegated? They need players that would be good in a scrap, and players who would fight to keep themselves up. But then where do you look for players like that? Do you look at West Brom? Do you look at other Premier League clubs? Do you look abroad? You don't want to be signing 10, 15 million pound players when they're not going to be doing anything. They just desperately need a striker, and they desperately need a change of luck. When they decide to bring in a new manager, hopefully that will do things for them. But until then, Swansea are in dire straits, along with the bottom three, who we're going to talk about now. And we're going to start with the Toon Army, and we're going to start with Newcastle. Whew, dearie me. I don't even know where to begin. I'm going to say that for probably the next 2 as well. But good grief, it's been poor. How many people had Newcastle to go down at the start of the season? Steve McLaren came in, was full of confidence, was excited about where things were going to go, signed some pretty good players. Mitrovic, who I saw last season, I can't remember where they got him from. I think it was from Serie A, but he looked a really, really good player. Hasn't really done anything. That Wijnaldum, who they signed from PSV, who was PSV Player of the Year, the Dutch Footballer Player of the Year, he's probably been their best player. He's been tremendous. I really like him. But Newcastle have struggled immensely. The fans, and the fact that the club have struggled goes with the manager as well, because McLaren has just, I don't even know. He just doesn't have any confidence about him. When he came in, he's like a shell of a man now, and it's worrying, really worrying. I would not like to be in his shoes or Mike Ashley's shoes, because Mike's given him the money to spend and he just hasn't spent it. I'll leave Wijnaldum out of this, because I think he's been a really, really good player, and he's a really, really good signing, and he's adjusted well to life at Newcastle. But boy, do Newcastle need some players in January. They need another defender, they need a goalkeeper, they need a couple of midfielders, they need some wingers, they need a striker. They need to sell a lot and need to change a lot, and it's probably the only club that need to. Out of all 20, even the bottom 2, I don't think need to make massive adjustments. Maybe because one of them are already relegated, theoretically, not mathematically, and the other one I think can stay up as long as one player stays fit and has enough supply. But I think Newcastle need a massive overhaul, and I think they need it sooner rather than later, because otherwise they're in some serious trouble. They are, I don't know, I think they're going to go down. I really do. I don't think Steve has the answer. I just don't. No one can get. I mean, Jose Perez does well when he wants to. They've had some good results this season, to be fair, Newcastle, when they've needed to. They beat Liverpool. They should have beaten Chelsea, but they took a point off them. At times they've had some decent results, but at other times they've just been absolutely awful. They beat Norwich 5-2 at home. That was a mad game. That's when Perez scored and Mitrovic scored, and when Wijnaldum got his hat-trick. Scored 4, and it's been just a horror show. And McLaren just doesn't have the confidence or the answers to turn it around. We've got, oh well, it's not great, is it? The fans don't really seem to like it, and I think at one point he said he wouldn't blame him if he went down. It's just sort of like, well, why should the players care if you don't? They'll win one game and he'll be cheering from the rafters, and they'll lose another one, and then he'll sort of like bring the letter of death towards him, and it's I can't work him out, and I've never really rated him as a manager. He did all right at England manager, didn't get us to the Euros, and it cost him his job. But I honestly don't think Newcastle are going to stay up, and it's perhaps what they need. When they went down, was it 4 years ago? No, they went down 5 years ago. They came straight back up, and they had a really, really good season in the Championship, and I think that's what they need. They need just to go away for a season, have another season of rebuilding, and then come back up. Similar to the next team I'm going to talk about, which is Sunderland, but I'll get onto them in a minute. And I genuinely think that's what they need. The fan base is astronomical in Newcastle. They sell St James's Park out week in, week out. And what do the fans want Ashley out? Ashley won't go. Fans want McLaren to leave. He won't go. If Newcastle get relegated, I guarantee he'll still be manager, because Ashley just doesn't know. You look at 2 years ago when they really wanted him out, and he renamed St James's Park and wouldn't give anyone money to spend anything. And he's changed a little bit. He seems to have improved, but fans still want him out, and I don't think they'll get what he wants, or they want, I should say. I think McLaren will still be in charge, and I hope to the fans' sake that they can, and McLaren's sake, that they can get out of this mess, because it's going to be a very, very long last 5 months for them if they don't. Another team who could well struggle in the next 5 months are Sunderland. They're almost as bad as Newcastle. Good grief. I've wanted Sunderland to go down for about 3 years now, and they keep pulling out of the bag, and it's starting to wind me up. They sacked Dick Advocaat after keeping them up somehow. Somehow they've survived the last 2 seasons with Gus Poyet and Dick Advocaat, and now they're going to somehow try and keep up with Sam Allardyce. Just relegate already. Fucking hell. I really just do not rate them as a team. They're awful. They've picked up in the last couple of weeks under Allardyce, and they've got some decent results. Jermaine Defoe scoring, it was a huge win they had at the weekend. They really needed that victory. But I really, really, really do not rate them. And the point I was making when I was talking about Newcastle, and they need someone to keep scoring to sort of push them up the league. Jermaine Defoe can do that, but he just needs service. Sunderland don't need a massive overhaul of squad. They maybe need 1 or 2 players just to sort of keep up and supply Defoe with the quality he needs. Because Sunderland don't have any. I would not, other than Defoe. Yeah, other than Defoe, I would not pick any Sunderland player that I enjoy watching. They're just not for me. I can't really. I said at the start of the first video I did that I wouldn't try not to be too biased about certain clubs, but I just really don't like Sunderland at all. It wouldn't bother me if they went down. It really wouldn't. I don't like Sam Allardyce as a manager. Ever since he made that comment about how he should be England manager, or he doesn't see why he's never been England manager, no thanks. What a bellend. I don't like him as a manager. I don't like his style of football. I didn't really like him as a West Ham. I would happily see Sunderland get relegated, to be honest, and I wouldn't really shed a tear about it. I'll do an end of season review and if somehow Sunderland stay up, I'm going to be so angry. I don't know what I've got against them. I just don't like them as a football club. Strange. But no, Defoe's goals will definitely help, and Defoe's goals could well keep Sunderland up, but he definitely needs some support and some supply. They've got Connor Wickham, who they paid £9 million for, and they wasted £9 million. They've got Fabio Barini, who they spent £10 million on, and they wasted £10 million. They need, Sunderland are one of those clubs that could probably go out and find like a Mahrez or a Jamie Vardy or an Igalo, spend a little bit of money on him, and he could probably do wonders. They're definitely one of those teams, but they're one of those clubs that because they've they're very well financially backed. You've got to say that about them. Because they're prepared to go out and spend 10, 15 million pound on a player if they need to, and they have done that in the past, and it's obviously not worked for them. Or they'll sign a lot of players for they'll spend 60 million pound in January, for example. They'll get a lot of players for that, but the players will be awful and won't do anything. It's been the last. I think a lot of fans will expect relegation because of how badly the last few seasons have gone. They just remind me of Wigan in the fact that they need to go down. You cannot start your season in April and just somehow survive in May. It's just absolute ridiculous. You're in the Premier League to compete, and if you can't compete week in, week out, then you get relegated. You don't turn up in May and April and just win 6 in a row and then stay up. Leicester probably would have done the same if they struggled this season and somehow stayed up and whatnot. But they've moved on from that and they've done incredibly well. But I just don't see Sunderland getting out of the hole. I think the Defoe will score goals. I just don't think he'll get any support or any service from anybody in that squad that can lift them out of this problem. And I think along with Newcastle, I think they'll go down. I think if Swansea buy a striker that hits the ground running in January and scores some goal, I think they'll be safe. And I don't see anybody in the bottom 3 getting out. And the bottom 3 at the minute are Sunderland, Newcastle, and Aston Villa, who may as well already be relegated. It's the last team I'm going to talk about, and then we're going to finish off the review, and we're going to sign off, and we're going to say bye-bye. And you can stop listening to me, because I've been talking for an hour and 45 minutes now. Aston Villa Football Club. Aston Villa Football Club will be playing Championship football next season. I've never, I've been following football for 17, 18 years now. I vaguely, you obviously sort of forget bits and pieces, but, I remember when Derby were in the Premier League and they finished with the lowest ever points tally in Premier League history. And I remember the team, and I remember how shit they were. They only won that. I think they only won one game out of 38, was it, or something like that? And I think that was after they'd already been relegated. Villa won on the opening day of the season, beat Bournemouth, and you thought, yeah, Tim Sherwood's doing all right, yeah. And Villa haven't won since. And since then, they've replaced Tim Sherwood with Remy Gard, and they've been dog shit. Absolutely awful. I cannot remember seeing a team so bad. They made some really astute signings in the summer. They bought Rudy Gestede from Blackburn. I don't think he cost that much. They bought Scott Sinclair from Man City after he was on loan. Tremendous signing, that is. They bought Micah Richards, who I felt was really unlucky at Man City. When Zabaleta came in, I felt really bad for him because I thought Richards did a good job at City. But they bought Micah Richards in, and they bought like a few sort of foreign players in. That Armand Traore from Barcelona looks a really, really good prospect, but they don't play him. Carlos Hill, who I thought would do a good job when they bought him for Valencia, they barely play him. Jack Grealish has had an absolute nightmare of a season when he's played and not been dropped or forced to train with the under-21s. There's just no positives for Villa. Their best player was that Amavi. I think he was their left back, who unfortunately is out for the rest of the season. I saw the game when United beat him 1-0 in the opening weeks of the season, and that Amavi really caught my eye. He's a really, really good player. I don't really know what else to say for Villa. Pray for Villa. One of my best mates is a Villa fan, and he's. I don't know if it was last season or this season, but he threw a shirt in the bin just because of how bad things were. I love football fans like that. But it's not getting any better for Villa. They've only got, 9 points? I think they've got, we've argued all season that Villa will get less points than Derby. Derby went down with 11, I think it was. I don't think Villa will be that bad. They are going down, but I don't think they'll be that bad. In a way, I feel a bit sorry for Remy Gard because of the situation he's been put into. He comes from, when he was at Lyon, he was I wouldn't say very successful, but I think he won them a couple of Ligue 1 titles. But I cannot see him getting out of this. The players are short of confidence, understandably short of confidence. There's just no goal scorers. There's just no energy in midfield. The fans, you listen to sort of like radio phone-ins like 606 on Radio 5, and you listen to it and you think, these fella fans, you just feel sorry for them. I think the one I heard on Saturday night when I was coming back from Chesterfield was something along the lines of, Yeah, we lost today, but I only go for a laugh now. I'm a season ticket holder. I just want some entertainment on a Saturday afternoon, and this is the best entertainment ever. And you just think, as happy as you sound, that's awful. You pay between £200 and £600 a season to watch your team lose every week, and they're supposedly a Premier League team. It's really, really sad, and Villa are one of the only clubs to never get relegated in Premier League history, and it's going to be a sad sight to see them when they go. Can they stay up? Not a chance. I do worry for them next season, though. I think that when the players that they'll sell clearly have to sell in January or even in the summer when they prepare for life in the Championship. It's going to be astronomical. The players they're going to have to bring in is going to be astronomical, and a huge overhaul is going to be needed. And I really, really worry that they're going to be one of the clubs that don't come back up straight away. And I think they're going to be like Blackburn and really, really struggle in the Championship. You see season after season how difficult it is to get out of that league. You look at Middlesbrough, look at Hull, look at look at Wigan, for example. They're in League One now. You look at Blackburn. They've not been anywhere near the playoffs since they've been relegated. I really, really worry for Villa. I hope it gets better for them. I really do, because a Premier League club who's never been relegated deserves a lot better than this. The fans deserve better. Tim Sherwood was unlucky, but you can't lose. So I think they've won 17 games without a win now, something like that. It's just, you wonder when the win's going to come from. If there's going to be another one, they can't be worse than Derby, can they? Can they? Will anybody ever be worse than that Derby team of was it 03, 04, 02, 01, something like that? A horrendous team. But that about wraps it up, guys. That is my Premier League review, mid-season review. I hope you enjoyed both videos, 2 videos. I'm sorry that the first one cut out when I was halfway through. That was very unexpected. I will upload both. Leave comments at the end of the video. Like I said, I'll subsection. I'll put the time that I'd start talking about each team in the video. Some will obviously be longer than others because I had some to say. Sorry if you didn't agree with what I said. I can argue left, right, and centre with you because I'll talk about football all day. The next review I do will be the Royal Rumble, which is at the end of January, I believe. I think it's something like the 23rd of January. So that'll be my next review for you there. But for now, my name's Alex. You've been looking and watching my Premier League mid-season review, and I am out of here. Thanks for watching. See you later, guys. Bye.